Hi everyone and welcome back. It's Mindy with Mindy Egan Design, and today I'm going to be showing the process of creating this card doing some watercoloring with distress inks. I'm going to be starting out with my Misty tool, and I'm using Canson watercolor paper. I have the Cherry Blossoms stamp set from Pretty Pink Posh. I thought this was just a really great stamp set to use this technique with. So my first step is going to be to heat emboss these images. So I had prepped my paper with an anti-static powder tool. That is just going to remove any static and oils off of the paper, so that way the embossing powder only sticks to where I want it to. And here I'm just arranging the flowers. I used everything off of the stamp set just because, well, most of the items off of the stamp set, because I wasn't sure how much I was going to use, and I thought it's better to have more than not enough. Now I'm going to take this clear ink from Simon Says Stamp. This is really great for embossing. It's just a nice sticky ink. So I'm inking up all of my stamps, and then I'll close the lid of the Misty and really give this some good pressure to make sure that I'm getting a good impression for all of these stamps, since I did go ahead and lay all of them down. Then I can open the Misty door, and I'm going to come in with some gold embossing powder from Gina Designs. I thought gold would just be a really pretty touch to these gorgeous flowers, so I'm sprinkling that all over where I had stamped those flowers. And then I'll go ahead and heat emboss these. Now I had my heat tool heating up off on the side. The reason being is that I can just come right to my paper and emboss those lines. The less time you spend heat embossing, the less warping you're going to have. You may still have some warping, but this will tone that down a little bit. And this is the sheet of all of those flowers embossed with the gold. Now I'm going to be taking the distress inks. So the first one I'm just rubbing off onto the glass mat here is Spun Sugar. And then I have Festive Berries, and I'm working on the Tim Holtz glass mat. I really wanted to give this a try. Since I do use a lot of different mediums, I like to play with alcohol inks and distress inks, and this really did work out great. It's a really good surface to work on and easy cleanup. So I have a glass of water off on the side that I'm going to be using to clean my brush with. I had dipped my paintbrush in the water to wet that, and then into the spun sugar, and so I'm just picking up that distress ink and putting down a nice layer. This is just a nice light coat to get everything started. This way my flower is going to be wet already, and I can bring in that Festive Berries. I do go back and forth between adding some water and picking up that Festive Berries ink, and it's really just a lot of playing to see what look you like, what works for you. So that's what this is. I'm definitely not a professional at doing any watercoloring. It was really fun to just play with it. So you can see I'm just bringing in a little bit more water. I'm dabbing that Festive Berries from the middle of the flower and working my way out. And then if I think that it is too much, I can come in with some more water and kind of push that dark color back towards the center. That's one thing that's really nice about watercoloring, I find, is that it's very forgiving. You can use water to kind of erase, I guess, so to speak, some of that color. So here I decided to bring out a little bit of the Festive Berries. I'm not really concerned about perfection here, obviously. It's watercoloring, and that's why I decided to play around with this, is that I really liked the natural look. It didn't have to be perfect. I didn't have to worry about which leaf overlaps another. It was just a matter of laying down that light color first, because I wanted to have not just a white flower in the background or white highlights. I wanted to have a contrasting color between the two and really have that pop off of the page. So that is why I used the Spun Sugar. And then the Festive Berries, you can see there I did get a little carried away with my water, and I had gone out of the lines, and so I just brought in clean water and pretty much just erased it, as how I would best describe it. I do the same thing for each of the flowers, And I do just play around as far as adding maybe a couple more lines that were longer than another, and then letting them dry. And I can come back in and figure out if I want to add more to them later. The gold embossing that I did, or any type of embossing, whether you use the white embossing powder or black, is to me kind of a nice starting point if you're getting used to watercoloring or anything like that, because it helps you control your water. It helps contain it into that area. So that's why I chose to do the embossing. It's just a really good starter, and I'm right along with a lot of people where you're kind of experimenting with it. So I thought I'd just show you how I did mine. And it's definitely something to practice with, but I will say I really did enjoy it. It's just something really different for me, and it was nice to just kind of watch that color spread in the water. I think that was the part I really enjoyed out of it, because it all spreads differently. No watercolor picture or card is ever going to be exactly the same just because of that. And there I was kind of running a little bit low on the spun sugar, so I just brought that back in and squished it down on the media mat, and then pulling out some of that festive berries. And as far as the paintbrush I'm using, this is nothing fancy. I think I probably picked this up at Walmart on a whim just to play around with. So you can use whatever you're comfortable with. If you like the Silver Brush Company, I've heard, is one of them. I don't have any of those yet, but this worked out really well for me, especially just getting my feet wet with watercolor. So they're bringing in some more of the festive berries, spreading that around, making sure to leave a little bit of highlight on the edges. And then coming back over to some of the flowers I had first done, which are a little bit dry by now. I didn't put a lot of water down, so it didn't take too long to dry. And just deepening up that middle a little bit more. And you can see here that was really easy to clean up. I just squirted some water down and wiped that ink away. Then I can come in with some colors for the leaves. And here I'm using cracked pistachio and peacock feathers. And I'm doing the same thing here. I'm wetting that down, adding that cracked pistachio, which is the lightest color, and then bringing in the peacock feathers, starting from the middle and working my way out. And just letting the water kind of do the work for me. And then I can kind of play with it and finagle it around if I wanted to push some of that darker color back. And that is going to finish off the watercoloring with the distress inks. And then here is a look at them dried, and you can see how that darker color kind of set back a little bit, and I really love how this turned out, especially with that gold embossing powder. I think just really adds kind of a classy look to it. Now for my background, I'm going to be using Bristol Smooth Cardstock. And this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I like to start with that card size. That way if I want to trim it down with a die, I can do that. So I just held that down with some purple tape. And I'm using the grid stencil. And I thought a nice blue color, a light blue color, would look really good on this. So I'm going to be using Salty Ocean and Broken China. And I'm just taking my applicator and I'm starting in that bottom corner because that is where I wanted my flowers to be. So I'm starting with that corner, and that can be darker because most of it's going to be hidden anyway. And then just brushing outward, and I'm making sure to go lighter as I go out because I wanted it to be scattered. I didn't want harsh edges of my grid. So I was really happy with how that background turned out. And then taking some more ink here that I smushed down on my mat, wet it down a little bit, picked it up with a paintbrush, and then I'm just giving this a really nice hard flick to get those splatters on the background. And I didn't feel like I had enough splatter there, so I'm just adding a little bit more. And then I'll let that dry. Like I said, this media mat is really great to clean up. Once I figured out the glare from my lights, this worked really well. And I just wanted to show you there, that was the stitched rectangle die that I used to die cut my panel out before I added those splatters. Now for the sentiment, I'm using Woodland Critters for the sentiment. This is also from Pretty Pink Posh. So I pulled that out off on the side, and I'm using the Misty tool, and I'm just kind of getting an idea where I wanted the flowers to go so I know where I can position my sentiment. And so I just make sure that's lined up straight. And I use the grid lines on the Misty door to line up my sentiment. And then I can use the Gina K Designs Amalgam ink. This is a really nice strong black ink. It's great for watercoloring or Copic coloring. So that is why I chose the Amalgam ink. And I only had to stamp that once. And now I can go on to assembling my flowers on my card. So what I like to start off with is just laying these all out and getting an idea which flowers I wanted to go in the back, where I wanted my leaves to be. And I'm using a tweezers so that way I can keep my fingers out of the way. Tweezers are probably on the top of my list of items I have to have in my craft area. They just come in handy for a lot of things. So now that I have kind of an idea where I wanted everything to go, I'm just taking the Gina K Connect glue and applying that to the back of those flowers and attaching that to the card. You can see I just kind of bring in the flowers, making sure I can see most of them. And I'm going to do something a little bit different for the ones that I want in the front. I'm going to take some foam tape adhesive and put that on the back of my flowers. Now this you can see is a big mama roll of foam tape. I've had this foam tape for probably over a year. It's pricey, but it's a great investment. You can see I still have a lot left. So I'm just cutting these down. I actually cut some in half and then just trimmed it down to the size I need to fit on the back of the flowers. And I can pop those up on my card. Thought that was a really nice idea to have those just kind of standing out a little bit, giving the card a little bit more dimension to it. And the foam tape is a really nice strong adhesive, so these won't be moving once I put them down. And they fit really nice around my sentiment. And I'm going to be attaching this to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 white card base. I really liked that white on white. It was just something to give it a nice white border around there, keeping the card nice and simple and soft, keeping the focus on those flowers. For a little sparkle, I'm going to add some of the sparkling confetti from Pretty Pink Posh. This is one of my favorite embellishments, is the confetti. And it's just a circle disc. It's nothing real fancy. It doesn't have a lot of glitz to it. It's just a nice kind of elegant embellishment to add. And I'll do that with my jewel picker and the Gina K Connect glue. And to finish everything off, I do come in with a shimmer pen and just apply that to the flowers that are sitting in the top. And that's going to finish off the card. So I hope you enjoyed watching how I created this card using the Distress inks to watercolor them. I really love how it turned out, and I'm really having a lot of fun playing with watercoloring. So definitely give it a try if you haven't yet. This was a great starter place to be, I guess is a way to put it. So thanks again for joining me. If you did enjoy the video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And be sure to hit the little bell so that you're notified when I do have new videos posted. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next time.